Lady Gaga talking about bullying and her passions onto some of these issues.
I know it's kind of weird. I do know all these people from having interviewed them. I know President Obama. I know Mitt Romney. I've interviewed 7 American presidents. But my producer told me, because I'm not a youngster anymore, so I don't get to watch all the movies that a lot of you kids watch. So I'm going to tell you a story. Now, my producer, Greg Christensen, he traveled here with me, and he guarantees that this crowd will go nuts when I tell you who I flew on the plane with from LA to New York Monday night. Hold, ready? Shh. I flew on the plane. Now again, he's new to me because I don't, with Taylor Lautner.
You heard the screams on that one. If I could ask, and you have to ask, of all the people who you sat down with and you've interviewed, what is the name that has gotten your youngest children the most excited?
This one. Okay. No, I didn't see the vampire movies. He's the second one is coming in November. He's going to Rio. He's a very nice guy. He's kind of good looking. But I tell you, when I meet people, I have great appreciation for what young people like and what they're into. I've interviewed the Jonas Brothers. There's sometimes older generations tend to put down what younger people like. But I've always been so curious that what I do, and I have a 13-year-old boy at home and a 12-year-old boy. I have 2 young children as well as older children. And I'm fascinated what they watch, what they listen to, what they like. Because if you're not cautious, if you're not curious, you're never going to learn. The only way to learn is to ask questions. My motto, I'll use this in interviewing. This was my motto. I never learned anything when I was talking.
Mr. King, you have sat down with the greats. You sat down with everyone from Bill Gates to the Dalai Lama, from Stephen Hawking to presidents, prime ministers, from the Jonas Brothers, and Lady Gaga, and all those names we all know. We all love. But I gotta ask, was there an unsung hero, someone whose story so inspired you that everyone here has to get out their Blackberries or their iPhones and Google it right now and learn about who that person was or is?
Oh boy, well, the young man you had here who climbed that mountain, that's incredible.
Spencer West.
People who've overcome this is a story. No. And we're having a lot of fun and there's a lot of joy. This story could make you cry. And I haven't told it in a long time. I'm not even sure I have the name right. It was either McDonald or MacArthur. The name is, the story is as important as the name. One day at CNN many years ago in New York, they told me I was going to interview a police officer, New York City Police Department. And I like cops, and I like interviewing cops and pilots. I love people of all professions. And this cop came in, and he was in a wheelchair, police uniform in a wheelchair. His wife was with him, and he was paralyzed from the neck down. Paralyzed. He had been shot in the chest and was paralyzed from the neck down. He was still a member of the police force. He was in what they call public relations, so that he would represent New York City police at various functions. His father was a cop. His grandfather was a cop. So he sat down. He was a very nice young man. And I said to him, "What happened? How were you shot?" And he said, "Well, there was a series of bike robberies going on in New York. Bikes were being stolen. and he was in a patrol car riding through Central Park when he saw a kid with a brand new bike, brand new sparkling Schwinn bike, a young black kid, about 17 years old. He got out of the squad car to approach this kid to ask him about the bike. Before he got there, the kid took out a gun and shot him. Down he went. He saw a puff of smoke come out of his chest. He was in the ambulance. They gave him the last rites of the Catholic Church, and he was going to die. He pulled through. He managed to live, but he was paralyzed from the neck down. His wife was pregnant at the time. She now has a little boy who is like 2-3 years old. He can't feel the kid when the kid touches him. He has no feeling from his neck down. He's totally paralyzed. And what he did was, when he recovered and when he was back at home, he asked what happened to the kid who shot him. And they said, well, the kid's in jail. I think he was sentenced to whatever it was, 5 to 8 years old. 5 to 8 years, he was 17 years old. He said, I want to go see him. I want to see the kid that shot me. So he went to the jail, prison. And the kid was there. Now he's like 18, I guess. Maybe he was 16 when he shot him. And naturally he said, look, I got out of my squad car. Why'd you shoot me? And the kid said, my brother was a bad guy. He had a lot of trouble, and he had this gun, and he was running out of town, and he gave me the gun to hold. I've never shot a gun in my life. I've never held a gun, never shot a gun. I was holding it that day. I had worked in a grocery store for years to save money to buy this bike. I loved this bike. I bought the bike that day with my own money that I saved. I'm in Central Park with the bike, and this he says to the cop, you were the 10th cop to stop me that day, standing with my bike. The 10th cop. And I lost it, and I shot you. Because I bought that bike, and cops were stopping me, and I just lost my mind and shot you. And so the kid said, may I ask you a question? And the cop said, yes. And the kid said, would you have stopped me if I was white? And the cop said, no. And the cop told me what he realized at that moment was, no, you don't shoot people. But then he also realized in his own mind, as a police officer, he would not have approached that kid if he was white. So what he did was he put himself in that kid's shoes. He walked in that kid's shoes. Here's a kid who's worked so hard to save for this bike, and for the 11th time, cops have stopped him because he had a new bike and he was black. They assumed he had stolen the bike. And so the cop said he had to take care of himself and be aware of his own self. End of the story. The cop adopted that kid as a big brother. And that kid is that kid shot that cop is now a New York City police officer.
Mr. King, you shared wisdom of Nelson Mandela on the courage to forgive. You spoke about sitting down that you had with Dr. Martin Luther King and talking about perseverance being the cornerstone of the civil rights movement. You shared of all the heroes, more than, and I know we cheered Lady Gaga, and we should, and more than Jonas Brothers and their friends, and they're great activists, and we love them dearly. But even more than that, the story that inspired you was this ordinary person. And I hope everyone will Google that. Can I ask a final question? The 60,000 interviews you've done, of everyone you've sat down with, of all those people who have sat across your chair from your years of radio, years of CNN, from Eleanor Roosevelt to the greatest movie stars and the icons and the change makers, is there one last last word of advice, last story, last teaching that you want to leave with these 20,000 students here who are committed to changing the world?
Well, I've done so many interviews over so many times of so many people. I've done humorous interviews, I've done comedians, I want to tell you something. The best story you can give is your own. I pinch myself every day because I'm aware that a lot of things happen to me out of luck. Right place, right time, take advantage of the luck. So the idea, whether it was civil rights or whether it was Frank Sinatra as a singer or Elvis Presley as a singer, I interviewed his manager many times. The one thing I learned from every successful person is that they wanted it. They wanted it. The doctor never went in to be a doctor for money. He went in because he wanted to help people. So I was just telling this to my friend Greg. This is a simple story of a doctor. This was a doctor, and I asked him, what makes a good doctor? What makes a good doctor? And he said, a good doctor loves sick people because he wants